Well, welcome everyone this Monday afternoon. Josh of Severe Weather. Appreciate you joining me. I hope everybody had a great weekend. We're going to talk about the tropics here and a new area that the National Hurricane Center is monitoring for potential development off the southeast coast, as well as the system that could still form near the Yucatan, Northwest Caribbean, or Southern Gulf later next week. Now, that forecast has changed some, and the crazy modeling we've been watching continues to show us something different. But I do still want to talk about it because it is something we're going to have to watch down the road here. We have gone the last 5 years with having at least one named storm in the Atlantic Basin, and most of those affecting the U.S. or Mexico in some way in the month of June. And I don't think there's any reason to believe that this year could be any different. So we're going to talk about that. And before we get too far, I would request that you become a subscriber of my YouTube channel if you haven't already. I will continue to give you all regular updates when we have tropical threats or any other major weather. Now, this is the area we're watching right now. It is a 10% area off the east coast here of the southeastern United States. And right now, just something we're watching over the next few days to potentially form. Now, the challenge we have with this system is that, number one, it's not going to be tropical in nature to start. And number two, it's going to be struggling to get over water. It may actually remain near the coast or even over land. So right now, the chance for development is 10%. Some of my models have shown a little bit higher opportunity for development, but for now, we're keeping it at about 10%. And the good news is that this would be heading away from the East Coast as we get to the weekend. So it would be more of an issue for this week for places like Florida and up the southeast coast than perhaps the weekend. So maybe a slow to develop storm, but one that should be out of our hair before then. Now, I wanted to go back to my first comment about storm systems in the Gulf during the month of June. And last year, we did have Tropical Storm Alberto around the middle of June that ended up forming and heading west towards Mexico, but producing some impact all the way up to Texas and Louisiana. Now, there's two typical paths we watch in June in the Gulf. One is a more westerly track towards Mexico and Texas and maybe Louisiana. The other is a turn to the right, affecting Cuba and Florida and the southeastern coast. And we've seen a mix of both over the last several years. Going back to 2023, we had something in the eastern Gulf that was Tropical Storm Arlene. Again, it was around the middle of June, but this system hit a lot of wind shear and never had a chance to really form into anything other than a weak tropical storm. And then it fell apart after that. The year before, right around Memorial Day weekend, we had a wave crossing from the Pacific into the Gulf and Caribbean. This ended up becoming Tropical Storm Alex after crossing Florida. The biggest impact from Tropical Storm Alex was before it even got its name. And that was heavy flooding rain over parts of South Florida as we got to the very end of May and beginning of June. After the system moved away from Florida, it developed enough of a core to become a tropical storm. It did so over the Gulf Stream and then headed towards Bermuda and then fell apart in cooler water. The year before, 2021, we saw a couple of preseason storms. Then we saw Tropical Storm Claudette in the Western Gulf, and that did hit Louisiana as a tropical storm. Fortunately, that was that. But later in the year, we had Hurricane Ida, I believe, in 2021. So obviously, that was a year where we started to see kind of a premonition of what was to come with an early season system here in the middle of June. And the year before that, 2020 was our record-setting year with 30 named storms, or even 31 storms, depending on who you talk to. And we did have we had one very early storm, which was off the East Coast. We had another one that followed that, which formed near South Carolina. But the storm that had more of an impact was Cristobal, and that was a tropical storm that formed in the middle of June as well and ended up coming up through Louisiana. So you can kind of see the tracks kind of split into two, one here in the Western Gulf, the other kind of in the Eastern Gulf. And those are the two areas I've been watching here for possible development. So we're going to come back to that in just a moment. I do want to show you the satellite first. And you can see right now things are becoming a little bit more unsettled across Florida, Cuba, and the Bahamas here. We do have an upper level trough that is bringing a lot of cloudiness, scattered showers and storms, and some locally heavy rain to portions of Florida, where we have had some warnings in effect and certainly some localized flooding. But this system is highly sheared and is interacting with land, so for the time being, it's unlikely to form into anything tropical. On the Pacific side, we had a tropical storm, Alvin, which came up this way and then died. It actually got picked up by this upper low, which has produced some heavy rain over parts of the Phoenix area and now the Four Corners. This is going to be a severe weather maker over the next few days across the plains, across Texas, and we may see several tornadoes across Tornado Alley in this area. We have an enhanced risk for that later today. And then in the Eastern Pacific, we have another pulse beginning to form here to the south of Central America that is showing some potential signs for development. Whoops, let me bring that back up. Actually, the Hurricane Center is a little more gung-ho with that potentially becoming a tropical system. You can see here, got about a 40% chance of development in the same place where we saw Tropical Storm Alvin at the end of last week. The next name in the Pacific, by the way, is Barbara. The next name in the Atlantic is Andrea, and the one after that, I believe, would be Barry. So we're still kind of early in the season where we've got a lot of prospects, but not a whole lot of fast development at this point. Things are still just kind of getting together this part of the season. Now, taking you into further off into the Atlantic, just want to show you all the water vapor image and the upper level pattern. Things are going to stay unfavorable for development for the most part here. And the reason why is we actually have a strong trough that is cutting through the northeast, and part of it is split off into the northern Gulf of America here. And you can see very dry air coming down from the central United States into the northern Gulf. But where that trough is meeting up here, we do have a bit of an upper level low, which is producing those showers and heavier storms over Florida and western portions of Cuba. And that is the area we're going to have to watch over the next several days. Right now, the wind shear is awfully strong, which means it's very unlikely this is going to try to form into anything tropical, at least over the next few days. But there are some signs that eventually, as it moves up in this direction, it may be in a little bit better favorable spot for something to try to gradually organize into a tropical system. It's not a high chance at this point, and a lot of that reasoning is, well, really there's two reasons. One, the strong wind shear out of the northwest, and two, the proximity to land is going to keep it from having a great chance to form and feed off of warm Atlantic waters here. Elsewhere across the Atlantic, you can see the Caribbean is going to stay quiet with strong westerly shear on the base of this trough here. That is going to be hostile for storms to form. You can see we have an upper low in the subtropical Atlantic, and then a large area of high pressure here across the north central Atlantic. So for the time being, we're not expecting development in these areas due to the fact that the setup just isn't there. But over time, we are tracking pulses coming across the Madden-Julian oscillation. It's a 60 to 90-day cycle that goes basically across the equatorial region from west to east. And right now, the main pulse is over Indonesia, and even there, we're not really seeing any tropical development. But as we move towards the weekend, you can see we are going to get rid of some of this hostile environment aloft and see a more favorable pattern over the next couple of weeks for what should be a Central American gyre. This is a very broad area that spins around Central America and can produce a couple of storms with it. We kind of saw a little bit of a preview of that last week with Alvin, but in reality, not really a gyre at that point. But this is what the models are now struggling with. The GFS loves to spawn something very quickly and form it into a big storm, and then it backs off with time. And I'm going to show you that in a minute, how we are seeing that trend again, and not really a surprise to me, even though I talked about yesterday what the models were showing, albeit they were more than 10 days out. But the thing I want you all to focus on is that at least for the next few weeks, we head into a more favorable pattern for development, first on the Pacific side of Central America, and then eventually maybe over the Gulf and Western Caribbean. Now, across Africa, things are going to remain very hostile. We're going to see Saharan dust. We'll see sinking air. And there's really not going to be anything that shows us a storm signal anytime over the next 45 days. We may see waves that come from Africa and eventually land in this area and have a better chance of forming. But at least for this time, we don't see any long-track threats over the next coming weeks. Here's the European forecast showing where storms may try to develop. And this is valid actually Wednesday into Thursday of this week. And you'll see outside of maybe some low chances here, there's really nothing to get going in the next few days. But as we get to the end of this week, Thursday into Friday, there may be some gradual development on the Pacific side. And then you can see this area here near the Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina coast, which has a very low chance of tropical development. That chance actually gets better as that feature pushes away from the Outer Banks and into the open waters of the Atlantic. So we're not ruling it out completely that this becomes a subtropical depression or storm and maybe eventually tropical. But the impact is actually going to be greater before it moves offshore on the U.S. and before it has a chance to become named. So non-tropical feature bringing heavy rain to parts of the southeast. Then after it moves away, it's got a chance to become a named storm. And that's what we saw here back with Alex in 2022. We had a lot of rain over South Florida, but the thing didn't develop until it moved over waters. This system, though, is going to take a track that's farther to the northwest, and its development area is actually going to be in here, not down in here, and the track should be more up along the coastline. So it's going to be struggling to distance itself from land at this point, but still something we need to be watching. Now, as we head into the end of the weekend, we likely have a system in the Pacific, and then we may potentially still have something that is northwest of Bermuda, southeast of New England on Sunday, and then those chances fade on Monday as this heads into colder waters. Now, beyond next Tuesday, around this time next week, we may start to see the Central American gyre get going. Now, the GFS a few days ago was saying, hey, I think something's going to try to form in here around the 9th, 10th, or 11th. Well, it has backed off, and because it's backed off, the potential path for this system does change. And the reason for that, and I'll show you in a little bit here, is that rather than there being a leftover trough that would induce this northward, that trough goes away, and we see an area of high pressure build in here, which would steer anything into the Western Gulf, perhaps towards Texas, but more likely towards Mexico. Again, if you're in the Gulf region, you need to be watching anything this time of the year, but I just don't see there being a major threat for a hurricane so early in the season. Another factor I've talked about is the Saharan dust, and you can see a big pulse of dust right now heading towards the islands as we get into the next couple of days. And this will head into the Gulf as well as we get into Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. You can see building around the central Gulf states. Now, it's not going to last forever. There's another pulse that comes through, but in between, you can see there's going to be somewhat of a break, and the dust should settle a little bit and actually allow us to have at least an opening for maybe some sort of development in here as we lose the unfavorable dry air from the dust here in the Gulf region around the 9th. We do see another pulse, though, coming off. And again, this is nothing unusual for this time of the year, but I've seen some of you mention to me that you don't think anything happens and that I'm completely wrong because of the dust. But really, you've got to look at more detail than just say that as a blanket statement. You can see there is going to be a window for a few days where something could try to form over time. It's not going to happen overnight, of course. And so I bring you here to the ensembles with the GFS here showing, again, a few solutions showing a very weak system possibly forming in here and generally speaking heading in this direction. Again, it's not super impressive, but maybe something that at least keeps them busy down in Miami at the National Hurricane Center. After that, and of course, you're going to see heavy rain across Florida over the next, say, week and a half to 2 weeks. We've got the potential to see amounts maybe 6, 7, 8 inches in South Florida, including the Keys. Heavy amounts as well across portions of western and central Cuba, portions of the northwestern Bahamas, and perhaps the Yucatan, Cancun, and Cozumel as well. And that rain does shift northward here. You can see over the next few days, we do see some higher amounts near the Outer Banks as we get into the late part of this week and beginning of the weekend as well. But having said that, this feature, yesterday, by the way, the European was showing that the upper low was actually going to end up a little bit farther east. You can kind of see that here. Now there's a region of high pressure that's actually showing up to be a little bit stronger to the north and east, which will delay it a little bit in any formation chances. So we do have an upper level low here. We may see a surface low try to form out in here. But the farther west this gets, the more likely the wind shear is going to get to it first. And that is obviously the kind of news we want to hear if we don't want to see a tropical system. But eventually, as we get into Wednesday night and Thursday, you can see a piece of this tries to get going near Myrtle Beach or near Wilmington or Cape Fear. And the struggle it's going to face is that it's basically still over land right into Friday morning before heading offshore Friday afternoon and Friday night. Then it gets pushed out here by the weekend, and you can see high pressure builds back in behind it. So here's another look from Tropical Tidbits of the upper level and mid levels here. And you can see where all the moisture in Florida is. And, you know, again, yes, we do have a circulation in here, but we have a ton of dry air here, which is going to limit its chances of producing a tropical system. It's going to remain kind of a hybrid type system where it's got non-tropical air coming in from the north and west, and then tropical air feeding in on the eastern side into Florida. So you can see how this system can evolve tomorrow and then into Wednesday. And the moisture does get pulled up into the low country of South Carolina later on Wednesday into Wednesday night. And then as we head into Thursday, there is a sign of maybe low pressure forming. But again, It's going to have to face a lot of dry air to its north. It's going to be dealing with some time spent over land. And really, it doesn't feed in off the Gulf Stream until it leaves here Friday night or Saturday morning. And by then, we have another front to push it away. So I'm not super excited about this one, but it's got a chance. All right, now let's look at the next feature that has gotten a lot of attention here on the internet. And the GFS does this quite a bit, but the model ensembles that we looked at a few days ago around 11th and 12th of June had a lot of solutions bringing something stronger up into here. You can see that support is completely gone during today's model runs. And because the system is going to be near Central America, when it begins to try to form and produces thunderstorms, they're going to be very loosely organized. So very, very difficult to get something to form. And by the time it does, the upper level pattern has now changed as we get to the 12th and 13th. And like I said, the window for it to come up in this direction that I was looking at a few days ago is no longer there. And as a result, we're going to see a very broad area of low pressure that is going to be fighting wind shear. It's going to be fighting the Yucatan Peninsula. And it's going to struggle to become anything tropical here for at least a few more days. Now, as we get to the 14th and 15th of June, we start to see the GFS and only the GFS showing a few more solutions that have maybe a potential feature somewhere in here. But this is not a very high confidence forecast at this point. So, yes, I'm going to continue to watch it for you all because I do think something could eventually happen out of this. But the odds of this coming north towards Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, or Florida as a strong hurricane are just not there. It's more likely we have a weaker type tropical storm or depression that ends up heading towards Mexico or South Texas. And again, we have plenty of time still to watch this. So at least for the next 10 days, I'm not expecting this to be a major impact. Once we get past about June 14th or 15th, we may have something else to talk about. And you can see the GFS still trying to get something to spin up here next week. But rather than it being a strong system near the Caymans, it's a much weaker system near Belize and the Yucatan by the middle of next week. Has to spend some time over land, and that'll be a fight for it. And then you can see the GFS is a lot weaker today. It does have a system towards Houston as a stronger tropical storm, but this looks quite a bit different than yesterday's solution, which was a hurricane heading into southwest Louisiana, and the day before, a solution which had a strong hurricane coming up near New Orleans. And the run before then, which, yes, I'm going to show this to you again, was a lot faster and had something coming up through Florida. So you can see where the trend is going here. It is slower, it is a little bit weaker, and it is farther south and west as well. And so if we continue to trend cast with this, I think by the time we get to the end of this week, we are more than likely looking at something very disorganized in here, and the track ends up being more in this direction, possibly still in this direction, but I think the chances for this to become a hurricane are extremely low at this point. So we're going to continue to monitor that for you all here, of course. I do want to show you the Pacific side here. Again, the GFS starting to tuck its tail behind its legs again with how quickly something can form. So this model continues to correct itself, but you can see it does show some gradual development and maybe does, in fact, have a tropical storm southwest of Acapulco, south of Puerto Vallarta, I believe it's called, as we get late into the weekend. And then that system may struggle. And then here you see the GFS showing a lopsided system, which will have to fight the Yucatan. And we don't exactly know how that's going to play out yet, but it does look like there could be at least something that we need to keep an eye on. And I did want to show you here the European ensemble, just to give you an idea of what the other models are showing, not just the GFS model. And you can see, going back to the 0Z run here from Tropical Tidbits, that it's not a 0% chance, but there are fewer solutions than the GFS showing something. In fact, if something forms from the gyre here, you can see there's a little bit better opportunity for it to happen on the Pacific side than on the Gulf side. So I do think we can get an Andrea out of this, but right now it's still too early to say. And we just need to keep an eye on things as we always do this time of the year. So I'm going to leave you all with that. I do want to finish up here with some good news, and that is the news that comes from the good book. I read the Bible every day as a Christian, and it is a love story for me, something as a Christian that I truly hold near and dear to my heart. You may not believe what I believe, and that's perfectly fine, but I do want to tell everybody here that first and foremost, I'm a follower of Christ, and I'm a Christian, and I'm a believer in God. Everything else is secondary. My dad's status, my employee status, my status as a meteorologist, none of that matters compared to what happens when our time here on Earth is gone. So While I'm here on earth, I'm going to do what God has called me to do, and that is to love him with all my heart. Mark tells us, Mark 12:30, that, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. This is the first commandment. That is going back to the Old Testament, the first commandment. Uh, Putting your love in God, anybody who's in a relationship understands that love can be tough, love can be tender, but God loves us. And because God loves us, we need to love him back. Even when you're going through a difficult time in your life, just know that if you have chosen to believe and follow Christ, that reward is there for the taking. It's a gift that God has given us, and that is eternal salvation and the opportunity to live with Jesus in heaven. You want to talk about love? I can't find anything else that even rivals that. Relationships on earth are wonderful. I have some wonderful friends, an amazing wife, great parents. But at the end of the day, they won't be in my life forever, eternally. What will be in my life forever is Jesus in heaven. So I would love to pray with you or for you. If you have any prayer requests, I am always able to receive those and happy to pray for you. And if you're not a believer, don't feel obliged to believe what I believe. I just wanted to share that good news with you today because I think it drives what I do here every day as somebody who can share on YouTube and use this platform as a ministry of God. So I will catch up with you all again soon, but I hope everybody has a wonderful evening. Take care.